Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer, in that order. Welcome, everyone. Today I want to discuss what I consider to be one of the more interesting Hall of Fame candidacies in any sport in recent years, and that is Eli Manning. The reason I find his case so interesting is that, every year there's sort of borderline players, and when you hear arguments for them, you can tell that the arguments are sort of reaching a little bit. Like, okay, his stats aren't that great, but yeah, there's sort of this sort of feeling. And same on the other side, like if someone's arguing against them making the Hall of Fame, the same sort of thing. Like they're sort of reaching, the points are sort of there, but you sort of have to make a judgment call. With Eli Manning, what's really interesting is I think there is an incredibly strong case that he belongs in the Hall of Fame to be made. I also think there's an incredibly strong case that he does not belong in the Hall of Fame to be made. And I don't remember a player where I felt that way regarding, both sides of the argument. So I wanted to do a sort of a point counterpoint video here. I'm going to first put on my Eli Manning belongs in the Hall of Fame hat and go over that. And then put on my Eli Manning does not belong in the Hall of Fame hat and then go over that. And then we'll give sort of my honest opinion at the end. And would love to hear people's thoughts on which side of the argument you thought was stronger. All right, Eli Manning absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Let's start with some of the obvious stuff. His career totals are just way, way up there on the all-time lists. He finished with over 57,000 career passing yards. That ranks him 10th all-time in NFL history. There are roughly 30 quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame. I say roughly because that includes some players who are like part-time quarterbacks in the early days. It's more like 25, real quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame. Well, Eli Manning ranks 10th all-time in career passing yards. Everyone ahead of him on the list is either in the Hall of Fame or is not yet eligible. And with maybe an exception or two, everyone ahead of him will, obviously make the Hall of Fame without much difficulty. Even the four players directly below him include Matt Stafford, who I guess is a borderline case at this point, and then three other Hall of Famers. Similarly, he finished with 366 career passing touchdowns. That also ranks him 10th all-time in NFL history. And very similar list, all the names ahead of him, again, are either in the Hall of Fame or not yet eligible. And, I mean, given that there's 25-plus quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame, how could you possibly justify keeping out somebody who is 10th all-time in both passing yards and passing touchdowns, essentially the two most important standard, passing categories? He's 10th all-time in both, and we already have 25 quarterbacks. How can you justify not putting him in? But anyone who follows football knows that that's not even the best argument for Eli Manning. His best argument are the two Super Bowls. There have been 14 quarterbacks in NFL history who have won 2 or more Super Bowls. Here is the list. Every single player on this list is a Hall of Famer or an obvious future Hall of Famer, with the exception of Jim Plunkett. And Jim Plunkett was sort of a unique case. He was a mediocre quarterback who just happened to be on an exceptional team. That's not the case with Eli Manning. Eli Manning was on a mediocre team and managed to bring them to 2 Super Bowl victories. Again, every single player on this list other than Plunkett is an absolute, no-brainer Hall of Famer. But we can take that a step further. Not only did he win 2 Super Bowls, he was the MVP of both Super Bowls. And here is the list of the 6 quarterbacks in NFL history who have won at least 2 Super Bowl MVPs. You can see the other 5 names on here are all all-time greats. I mean, Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Patrick Mahomes, that might be, 1, 2, 3 right there. Terry Bradshaw, Bart Starr, of course, all-time greats. No-brainer Hall of Famers here. Keeping somebody with 2 Super Bowl MVPs, given that the NFL is all about the Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowl MVPs out of the Hall of Fame would just be, cuckoo town. And to take it a step further than that, not only did he win 2 Super Bowls and 2 Super Bowl MVPs, he won them both against the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. And the 2007 season, which was the 2008 Super Bowl, the Patriots were arguably the greatest regular season team in NFL history. They were the second undefeated team ever. They were an absolute powerhouse, and they were a 12.5-point favorite in the Super Bowl, yet Eli Manning and the Giants, managed to overcome it. In both of Manning's Super Bowl victories, he led late fourth-quarter drives to bring his team, come from behind victories, absolute clutch performance late, 2 of the greatest, individual clutch performances in Super Bowl history, something that really only a Hall of Famer could accomplish. So in summary, his regular season numbers and career totals basically make him a Hall of Famer already, but what puts him beyond over the top are his absolute clutch performances on the world's biggest stage multiple times. Throughout his career, Eli Manning was a good quarterback. He was not a great quarterback, and he was certainly not a Hall of Fame quarterback. We'll start with his winning percentage, which was 500. In his career, he was 117 wins, 117 losses. That is literally the definition of mediocrity. His 117 losses ranks second all time, second most losses in NFL history, behind only Vinny Testaverde. There are only two quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame with a losing record in their career, Joe Namath and Sonny Jurgensen, both of whom played way back in the 60s, basically multiple generations ago when the game was entirely different. There's certainly no modern quarterbacks who sniff the Hall of Fame with a 500 winning percentage. Now, Manning does land pretty high on some of the all-time career, passing stat lists, but that's because he played a long time and was essentially just a stat accumulator as a good quarterback, not a great quarterback. In his 16-year career, he never once led the league in any significant category, not touchdowns, not yards, not quarterback ranking, not completions, nothing of importance. He did lead the league in interceptions, of course, a negative category, 3 times. If we look at a stat that isn't just an accumulation stat, but a number trying to represent how good a quarterback is in one number, let's say passer rating. His career passer rating is 84.1, and that's just not that impressive. It ranks him 65th all time. Remember, there's 25-ish quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame. He ranks 65th in this very, very important category. Basically, all the Hall of Famers, with a couple exceptions, are way ahead of him here. There are 2 quarterbacks sort of in his vicinity who are in the Hall of Fame, Jim Kelly and Roger Staubach. But again, both of those quarterbacks played, many decades ago when the game was entirely different. If we look at players from his time period who had very similar career passer rating, you get players like Brian Griese, Joe Flacco, Mark Bulger, Sam Bradford, Jay Cutler, players like that who, players who are clearly not Hall of Famers. To hammer home the good, not great, look at these numbers here. In his entire 16-year career, Eli Manning never received an MVP vote, meaning he was never an MVP contender or not even close. He was never an All-Pro. There are 2 All-Pro quarterbacks every season, so he was never one of the 2 best quarterbacks in the league in any season. And he was only a Pro Bowler 4 times. There are 6 quarterbacks selected to each Pro Bowl, meaning he was only one of the 6 best quarterbacks in the league only 4 times in his entire career. 4 Pro Bowls is not a Hall of Famer. Hall of Famers usually are in the sort of 8, 9, 10 category and up. There are exceptions where there's some down in the 4, 5, 6, but they're not many. Here is a list of the quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame who started their career after 1980. I also threw in 4 obvious future Hall of Famers in Brady, Brees, Rodgers, and Mahomes. You can see the number of Pro Bowls and All-Pros that they achieved during their career. Eli Manning way down there at the bottom, far below most and, below everybody. He just doesn't hang with these guys in terms of the greatness they put up over the course of their career. Now, Eli Manning is known as one of the great clutch performers in the playoffs throughout his career, but that's actually wildly exaggerated. His career playoff record is 8-4. That's good. Is it great or amazing or anything? No, it's good. And all 8 of those wins came in the 2 Super Bowl run years. So think about this stat I'm about to say. Eli Manning played 16 seasons in the NFL. He only won a playoff game in 2 of those seasons. He never won a playoff game outside of those 2 Super Bowl runs. And while he was great during those 2 Super Bowl runs, does 2 one-month stretches of impressive football make you a Hall of Famer? Yeah, I would say certainly not. But that's it, the curious case of Eli Manning. Let me know which side of the argument you think was stronger, and what do you think? I personally, if it was completely up to me, I would not put him in, but that's because I tend to be a small Hall guy. I think the way the Hall of Fame is set up now, he deserves to get in, and I think he ultimately will get in. So that's my guess. But really appreciate everyone watching. Again, would love to hear your thoughts on it, and see y'all again next time. Thanks everyone.